God did not call you to preach. No, we're going to talk about it. He actually called you to finish school and go get a job. But instead of taking accountability and finishing what you started, you told everybody that you were a prophet of the nations. Now you in somebody's pulpit mispronouncing Philippians and now telling 10 people to stand up to sow a seed of $10,000 for the third offering. Yeah, I know y'all finna be mad at me. You ain't picked up a Bible in 6 months, but you reading a devotional from Barnes & Noble and regurgitating what you read and preaching it every Sunday with no application or understanding. Somebody preached that already and got the nerve to claim you are blowing the Ruha wind of the Spirit on people. That ain't the Holy Ghost. That's gingivitis. No, I'm gonna call it out. You over here selling prayer cloths that you got from Temu, talking about they were dipped in the River Jordan last week. You ain't studied nothing. God did not call you to preach. He actually called you to take care of your kids and be man enough to have a decent conversation with your wife. You can speak to nations, but you can't tell your wife to stop bullying you in front of people at Walmart. I just want my people to do better. That's all. Be delivered and get out that pulpit.
Let me take it a step further, because I agree with everything that man just said. I've seen many people who have walked up to the pastors and churches and say, God has called me to preach. And I've had people when I was younger and I was a Christian who would come to me and say, and tell me that God had told them that I was supposed to become a preacher. And I've always had a problem with that, because if God called me to be a preacher, he'd have told me. But even in thinking about that, most people say God called me to preach because you had an emotional moment, and actually it's your inner voice, is you that has called you to go do this, not some deity because of the emotional attachment that you have to this religion. But let me go a little bit further. To all people, God did not call you to be a Christian. God did not call you to be an Israelite. You see, the Israelites were a people who had separated from the Canaanite people during the Bronze Age collapse. And they were a small group of people who then became their own little nation, and then got conquered by the Assyrians, and then the Babylonians, then the Greeks, had a little bit of freedom, then the Romans, and then the Ottomans, and then the British, and then the Ottomans, then the British, and back and forth until they have their own independent state right now. And even some of those are Israelites who were exiled from the Levant on multiple occasions. So for all the other people around the world, this God did not call you to be a part of them. Even though your New Testament was talking about go spread this word to the Gentiles, God did not call you. You see, in and around 381, Emperor Theodosius decided that all of the Roman government was going to be Christian. And therefore, people who had no attachments to Christianity and people who had no attachment to being an Israelite were forced into Christianity by the rule of the government and the military of the government. In 330, King Azana forced the kingdom of Axiom, which became Ethiopia, to become Christian by rule of government and military. In 301, the Armenian government forced the people of Armenia to become the first Christian state and forced those people to give up whatever religious beliefs they had and forced them into Christianity. And then as we just go along through history, as the Europeans began to expand around the world, the European influence forced the natives of Africa to become Christian through colonization, forced the natives of the Americas to become Christian through colonization and through treaty. Hey, you five you five civilized tribes, if you dress like us and you believe in our religion, we'll be more friendly to you. We're going to send you on this trail of tears because we want your land. But act like us and believe like us, and we'll call you civilized. And so they forced them to become Christian. My ancestors who came across during the transatlantic slave trade, hell, they were forced to be Christian at the end of a whip with a gun pointed in their back. And I can say the same thing for Islam, but this channel is dedicated to the deconstructing of Christianity. So all in all, other than a very tiny, tiny small group of people who were forced to separate from whatever the Canaanites were believing at the time frame in the Yahweh and the pantheon of Yahweh, El, Asherah, Yahweh, Baal, They were forced into believing just in Yahweh, and they were forced to be Israelites due to the Bronze Age collapse. Everybody else who's been forced, your ancestor was forced into this religion. So I'm gonna need y'all to put that down. I'm gonna need y'all to walk away from that. I'm gonna need y'all to realize that the only reason that you are a Christian today, the only reason you were indoctrinated in Christianity is because your family at some point was forced into this religion. I want you to think about something, all you non-Catholics. How did you become non-Catholic? You became non-Catholic, let's say, look at the Anglicans. You became non-Catholic because first Henry VIII wanted to divorce his wife, and the Pope said, hell no. So then what happened? Henry VIII started his own church. But then here come old Bloody Mary. She forced you back into Catholicism. But then we get to old James, who wanted to rule his own country. So he forced you back into being Anglican, forced you back into the Protestant Reformation, and took on some of the writings from John Calvin and Martin Luther, and created his own brand of Christianity where he appointed himself as the head of the Anglican Church. And he forced it. And then the Pilgrims and the Puritans came out of England and came to America. They were forcing people to their version of Christianity. And when the black people and the white people couldn't go to church together, you had the Methodist Church, and then they forced black people to be the African Methodist Church. So it was all through force. It is all based on racism and nationalism. It's based on power. I think you need to put this thing down once you research it. And that's why most of us who watch these videos had made that decision to walk away from this church. Because at the end of the day, we recognize that this religion, that this belief in this God was forced on you. And even when you go back to your ancient gods of your ancestors, at some point, some leader forced your ancestors to believe in Olorun, Quechua, Mamawata, Zeus, Thor, Woden, the sky gods, Quetzalcoatl. All religion has been forced on people at all times. When you're going to grow up and decide for yourself what you're going to believe and what you're going to know. Because when you know a thing, there's no room for belief. So y'all have a great day. And remember always, you have to free yourself to be yourself, because your greatness is non-negotiable. Good journey, good vibrations.